Welcome to the April 25th meeting. Jumped the gun a little bit there. Of the Lake Forest Historic Preservation Commission. The Commission's here tonight to work together with all of you, property owners, neighbors, and architects, to continue the tradition that was established nearly 40 years ago in this community. That tradition is a review process that allows community members to work together to preserve the qualities and unique character that make Lake Forest a special community. City of Lake Forest is committed to conducting open and democratic meetings. To achieve that goal, meeting procedures have been adopted by the Commission, and a copy of the procedures is available at the back of the room on each agenda. As always, it's the intent of the Commission to help manage the development and growth of the City of Lake Forest with a keen sense of preserving the historic structures and open space in the city for all its present and future residents. Our goal is to move each petition before us tonight through the review process as quickly as possible while balancing the interests of the petitioners, neighborhood property owners, and the larger community. And so I'll start the meeting this evening with the introduction of the commissioners.
Susan Athenson.
Guy Berg.
Kurt Pairitz.
Fred Moyer.
Bill Ransom. Jim Preschlack.
Thank you. And let's see. I do not think that we have meeting minutes. So we are just going to skip that until next month and dive right into new petitions. Our first order of business is a request for a certificate of appropriateness for approving replacement or new signage for St. Mary's Church and school campus at 175 East Illinois Road. So if you want to come on up and walk us through that, that'd be great. I'll ask if anybody has a conflict on this one. Can't imagine what that would be, but
I would just disclose I'm a parishioner at St. Mary's, but that
That would make it
we'll keep that in mind. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Father Mike McGovern, the pastor at St. Mary's, and thank you for being here this evening and for your consideration of our request. Perhaps the document prepared by actually Megan O'Neill did a fine summary document that might be what we could use to work through the petition itself. St. Mary's, as you're aware, has our property at the corner of between Green Bay and Illinois Road and Oakwood and Illinois Road that we would like to have a unified signage plan for our campus. We're asking to remove several signs and replace them with new signs, and then there's an additional sign, but that we want to have some symmetry between the signs themselves. First off, we'd like to put monument signs on the corners by the church, and then also on the Oakwood side of the property at the corner there of Illinois and Oakwood. Those monument signs would, both would read Church of St. Mary on the text, and then on the Green Bay side, beneath it would say a Roman Catholic Church, and on the Oakwood side it would indicate established 1875. We did put the stakes with the ribbon in place. You were provided with photographs of what that looks like, a reminder that the flower bed that's in the Oakwood side of the property will be removed, and as recommended by the city, we would certainly meet with staff on site before the signs were actually put in place, new signs, to work out the setback and details such as that. There's also a proposal to put a monument sign across the street on the north side of Illinois Road where St. Mary's Green is located. Over a year ago there was a car that slid and knocked out the sign that was there. This is really to replace a sign that was existing, but we will keep the same pattern of a white sign with blue lettering for that sign as well. And I certainly acknowledge and would follow the idea of the city arborist examining that location to make sure that a new sign doesn't disrupt anything with the mature trees that are already there. There's also additional signs that would be placed for the school, the upper grade center, which would be a sign on the Green Bay side of the property, a hanging sign very similar to many of the schools and country club south of us on Green Bay Road that have kind of a white cream colored sign with letters, and you have images of what that sign would look like. There'd be a small sign to indicate where our elevator is to access the elevator in the church, a sign for our parish center, and a sign for the school. So you have samples there of what everything would look like. One variation is we would like the school sign to be lit, to be illuminated, and certainly recognize the recommendations, point 3 and point 4 from the city already about the style and intensity of the light fixtures, and to have a compatibility study with the residential character of Green Bay Road. We would certainly work with the city to implement that at the time of implementation. So the main thing I think that might be of interest is two things. On the St. Mary's sign, there'd be a small Celtic cross at the top of either one, which reflects the Celtic cross that's on the top of the church itself, and then also that there's a small logo on the school sign reflecting the School of St. Mary logo. But I think you have images of all of that provided for you, and I'd certainly be willing to, if the city wants to respond or comment.
All right, thank you. Do we have a staff report?
The proposal is based on an existing sign that exists on Everett Road. The signs are proposed as wood with a white background and blue accent color and text. The commission should comment on the size and location of the monument size and wall signs, the use of the graphic on the monument sign and the post sign on Green Bay Road, as well as the illumination of the post sign at the entrance to the school. Staff is recommending approval of the project as submitted, with some conditions of approval that were touched on by the petitioner with respect to meeting on site at the time of installation to really make sure we get the location to be a visible location and the landscaping to work with the corner and visibility as you're rounding the corners. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. Now's an opportunity for any of the commissioners to ask questions or have comments to the staff or the petitioner. If you have any.
I have a question about the lighting. Is the lighting on timers? What is the restrictions, either the petitioner or the city staff, regarding the lighting of the signs?
I believe the signs have a timer that they come on, and it's adjusted in terms of dusk and dawn, the sign would be there with the illumination similar to the other schools that have illumination up and down Green Bay Road. But I do believe there's a timer on it, and we would just simply, it would be off during the day and on at dusk. I'm not sure if we would turn it off after, let's say, midnight. That wasn't discussed at this point, because the purpose of the illumination is if there's evening activities that people can locate the school for a basketball game or whatever's going on in the gym, things like that.
So a condition of approval limiting it till 11 o'clock at night or something like that?
Right, if you wanted to put a limit on it, we'd certainly adhere to that.
Okay. And does the city have any comment on that?
That would be consistent with other lights that are around town, to limit it to being off at a certain time and to be on during special events that are held on the campus.
Okay. And as far as the monument signs on Green Bay in Illinois and Oakwood in Illinois, in determining what size was needed, what was the thought process behind that?
Well, if the way that the stakes are set in the ground with the ribbons, what that reflects is the fact that the sign arcs up. So those are the high and the low points.
Okay.
It's not, the whole sign is not one solid rectangle, but that the maximum height is at that level. And so it has sort of, as the church itself and architecturally, like with the windows, has that rounded section. That's what's reflected there, just as like the Celtic cross as an image reflects the cross that's on top of the church itself.
Okay, okay, that's good.
Hi, Father. I have a question in regards to the history of the church and its current location. Did you do any research around original signage and or other artifacts to inspire this design, or do you know much about the history?
Well, the first church was, 1875 was the founding of the parish. The original wooden frame church that stood in the same spot was taken down in 1909 for structural reasons. A new church was built by Father Berg. That church has been there ever since. As far as I know, the only sign is the current sign, the sort of brown and gold sign that's been there for many years, that's worn out. But I have nothing turned up in terms of earlier indications. Looking at photographs and things like that, I did not see, in reviewing the history of the church, it was 100 years old last year, there was no other photos of signs until that brown and gold sign went in, and I suspect that was from the 70s.
I'll follow up on that question. Hi, Father Moyer.
Hi, Susan.
I think, of course, this signage design is a much big improvement over what we have right now, which is great. But I just had a question. There's so much, you can read them a lot better, but did you I noticed when you have the signs up on the buildings, they kind of clashed a little bit with the building, I thought. And did you look at different color alternatives to the signs?
Right, we did look at different ideas about the colors. I mean, the church is a red brick, and with Romanesque stone ornament. The school used to be red brick until it was a double brick was put on. It's more of an orange color. After the Second World War, it was difficult to come up with red brick pigment. The church is dedicated to St. Mary, so white and blue are natural colors for something Marian. The hope was that you would be able to read the sign at a distance without the sign being distasteful in any way. So the hope was that you would be able to see the sign. In fact, in walking around, the blue almost appears a little bit like black because it's a dark blue, but again, that helps you be able to pick up the sign at night. So we did look at different options in terms of possibly doing more of a brick sign on the corners, but the wooden sign seemed to be simple, tasteful, effective. The hope is to have a kind of a warm and welcoming environment. But in terms of colors, I would say the white and blue, we hope that it stands out without being distracting.
Okay.
Just stands out in a good way.
So thinking about the visibility issue, do you see a need to illuminate the sign for the church on Green Bay in Illinois?
To eliminate it?
To illuminate it.
No, I think there's not that many activities in the evening in the church that would draw people unfamiliar with the parish. Okay. The school campus, especially like the gymnasium with sports, we have people in and out all winter who this might be their first visit to St. Mary's School. So in some ways, the school needs the illumination more than the church does.
Okay, that makes sense. And then one question about that school sign. I noticed it's the only sign that has the Values for Life banner across there, and I assume that's for the school.
Right.
But the only concern I have with that is that if you're driving by there, you can't really read it anyways, and just wondering if it makes the sign look a little busy. Would you consider removing that banner, or is that really important?
We did have discussion about that, and the hope was, I believe, the school sign at Everett, on the Everett Road, does it have the logo? No, it does not, the one at the PGC, but we use that logo on stationery and other things that go out from the school, so the hope was to include that. If the committee recommends that we reevaluate that, we can do that.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Any other questions?
I've got a quick question for staff. I'm just trying to think, is there a time limit on some of the signs further down on Green Bay, like the Wensia Club and the Country Day? They have lit signs. Do they stay on all night? I mean, there's something comforting, actually, about driving down our streets at night, and it's such a quiet community, and then there are these little beacons, and they never shine in anybody's window and keep anybody awake, and they're kind of a comfort. I mean, is it...
I don't recall if either Country Day or Wednesday signs actually go off. I think the practice has been that the lighting is very subtle. We haven't made that requirement. Certainly for the larger signs or parking lot lights, that has been a consistent requirement that they shut off at a certain time just to protect the right to night. So I think it really depends on the intensity of the lighting on the sign, whether or not it does exactly what you said, it provides a subtle beacon along Green Bay Road, or whether it's something that could be disruptive to drivers or neighbors.
Okay. You know, basically, I think it's kind of nice to have one of these hanging signs because we see so few of them, and they're kind of a tasteful, you know, old-fashioned way to display a sign. So I'm kind of excited about this.
Right.
In fact, so much so that I was wondering, there's a lot to consider when you're you know, presenting these things, and some of the other signs in town that have almost become kind of little icons as much as they are just signage. Like their horizontal member that holds the sign, perhaps you might think about articulating the ends of those. Right now they're just kind of chopped off. And maybe if you look at some of the other signs and you can give that sort of a termination, that might embellish it a little bit from it.
Such as a rounded ornament of some
Or
sort?
something, you know, some of them actually will route the edges in a little bit and let it flare out. If you look at a few other photographs that you included, just in an effort to make it even a little more attractive, because I think it's a good idea, and I'm glad to actually see it happening. But that's all I have right now.
Any other questions?
And I would just mention, too, that we are going to landscape after we put the signs in, that there is a landscape plan. I believe you have copies of that, which would be in 2 phases, because it is an important gateway corner to the community, so we do want to make sure that we improve the landscaping.
Actually, are those widths of the stakes, and are those indicative of the length of the sign, too? Is that?
Where the posts would be
Yeah.
for the sign, yes.
Yeah, the scale looks pretty good.
Thanks for pointing out the landscaping. I'm not sure we are doing anything with respect to landscaping this evening for this, are we? Is that part of what we're reviewing and approving?
There is a conceptual landscape plan in the packet. It would be appropriate to comment on that, recognizing that the first phase of the installation of signs and later, I believe each year, would be a plan.
Okay. Thanks.
Right, Greg Frick, landscape design, prepared the plan.
Does the landscape, the bed on Green Bay, Illinois, really change that much?
Well, it would simply beautify. I mean, there's a bush there behind the current sign that just really
Yeah.
should be taken out. It's so it should be probably replaced with something with flowers, and the flower bed that's on Oakwood, at the corner of Oakwood and Illinois, that would be taken down. It has a brick foundation. We just take that out and replace that. And the artist, landscape architect, I should say, came up with the plan.
Yeah, okay.
And we could meet with anyone from the city who wants to review the plan or see it before we start planning.
And essentially, both beds for the monument signs would be the same, kind of mirror images of each other?
Right.
Okay.
All right, opportunity for any public testimony, if we have any, on this item, and I don't see any, so we'll pass on that, and it's an opportunity for us to deliberate. If we have any deliberations.
No, I'm ready to approve it. I just want to discuss a little bit more about the lighting. I don't want to make this inconsistent with other things that go on Green Bay Road. Maybe if we add a condition that at the staff level, they look at to see if it's appropriate to put on timers or something, or the proper times for lighting it, and we leave it at the staff level. I'd be comfortable with that, unless there's other thoughts by
Yeah, I agree with
commissioners.
that. I think it's a fairly modest sign, and I think we can have Kathy and her folks take a look at that and make sure that that's done appropriately. I do like Guy's point on the horizontal member of the bar, and actually I have another idea for you to think about, although I don't think I would make it a condition of approval. I think what you were talking about in terms of the character of these signs and how they relate to the architecture of the church is a little contrary, because they're almost colonial feeling with this white and blue, and the church has a different kind of period feel to it, a lot of browns and reds and that kind of thing. And if you look at on your way out the door this evening, if you look at the signs that are in the front of the City Hall building, the signs that are, I don't know what those are called, display signs or whatever, as well as the signs across the street that announce the coming events in the city of Lake Forest. This thing is killing me, it's so loud. They painted the frames dark. In the case of this building, they painted them to match the trim. I think the kind of the deep blue of the window trim. Those signs originally were white, I think, and I think that after living with them for a while, they decided that that white framing was kind of, I won't say garish, but was a little more outspoken than they wanted that to be, and it actually distracted from the sign itself. The signs being white and blue don't bother me at all, but I think if you looked at these signs with brown posts that would match the trim work on the church, might actually feel more contextual with the church. So something to think about. But I would work with staff on that. I don't think that would be something I would, want to hold you up on. I don't think they would be bad looking either way. I think that you could tie them back to the architecture of the church a little bit if you did that. So.
Yeah, I would just have one more comment too about that. The same thing, thinking that, I mean, when you think of the freestanding signs like at Lake Forest Hospital, well, it's not there anymore. The old one, Lake Forest High School, Unwinsea Club, they're all the same design, but they're so far away from the building that there's no contrast, in terms of style.
Yeah.
So it just caught me when I saw it actually on the building that it might contrast. But then it's an identification thing too. So
this is really hard. We spend a lot of time on signs, and it's like an inordinate amount of time on signs because they're hard to get right, and there's a lot of touchstones in the community for different examples that work equally well. The Lake Forest Academy has a white sign with a white post, and it's kind of stand all by itself. If you look at the parking signs for the city parking lots, they're black posts, and so the posts kind of go away, and the signs are readily readable. So I think you could do it either way. It's just something to consider. Just be aware of it when you're ordering signs, and pick what you like to live with. I think is the basic direction there. So.
And the only other comment I would have is about the logo, because typically we don't allow logos on our signs. We just use them for identification.
Yeah, it's so subtle, though. I'm not sure it bothers me.
I
agree. I don't think you'll really see it from the street.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to see it, but I'm just wondering if it's going to, I don't know, maybe take another look at it, see if it's too busy for that sign, if it really is even visible, and would it look better without the banner? Maybe it would look, be a better sign for people to focus on what you're trying to identify instead of just the banner.
Ask for a mock-up without it and see how that looks.
Yeah, see what you think, so.
That's another one, I think, as far as I'm concerned, if you work with staff on that, I don't really have a problem with it. I think you'll see that it's a real subtle difference one way or the other, so. Any other comments? Sure.
Well, just to weigh in, I actually like the logo in there, and I'm not concerned about the fact you can't read it. I think it has a nice finesse to it, and the detail makes the sign more interesting, and from my point of view. And the character of the lettering, I think, is just very appropriate for this location.
Yeah, I actually kind of like it, to tell you the truth, and they do have a sidewalk there. So, we have realtors come in with their signs, and they have this corporate stuff, and we have to kind of bend for them because they've got to have that, or it's the end of the world. So I think this is okay too. I mean, Susie's actually very astute, and her intuition's great, but just so you kind of have a little running tally, I think maybe that might help staff too. Nice stuff.
All right. I'd entertain a motion if I could get one.
I'd move to approve the petition as presented with the conditions in the staff report, and with the additional condition that the staff review the times for the lighting.
All right, the motion has been made by Commissioner Ransom. Do I have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Moyer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes. Congratulations. Good luck with that. All right, our next agenda item is a request for a certificate of appropriateness approving an addition and alteration to the building scale variance at 521 East College Road. And I'll ask if there's any ex parte conflicts on this one. And I see none, so come on down and tell us what you got.
All right. I'm Bob Ruggles, architect. The petition I have in front of you tonight is a request for building scale variation to 521 College. It's a small kitchen remodeling and addition, and the reason we feel we should be awarded this request is it's a small request. The house was built in 1969, so the floor plan has not been modified really in those 52 years. So the house is a bit disproportionate in between the formal size spaces and the informal size spaces. So the kitchen is disproportionately small compared to other houses in the market, or if we were to design a new house on this lot today. It is, to wrap your head around the size or how much we're asking for, it's essentially 65 square feet underneath, or 2% underneath the maximum building scale right now. And we're asking for 64 and a half on top of it. So it's 130 square feet that we're adding for 65 below and 65 above. Moving on to some of the images. The red dot is the subject residence, and the house immediately to the left of it was built in 1969, and I believe is the exact same plan. It's a builder's colonial style house, and so when the two houses are built together, this predates any of the similar dissimilar ordinances in our community. So now that we have those, and now that we have greater awareness of the preservation and what every building does to our context here, I believe that the improvements done over the last 5 years by the Davises to 521 College to distinguish itself as different from the house to the west, including this improvement, which importantly is not visible from the public view and is small but important, and continues to distinguish itself as different from the house next door. And that in itself addresses some of that similar to similar. The lots, the pattern of the neighborhood is small, half-acre lots, closely spaced houses. So a little photographic tour. This is the street view. This is the back view. This is the view to the west where the addition will go. There's a little garden window where the kitchen sink is right now. That's exactly where we're going to bump out. You can see there's a fence around the property and mature landscaping. This was taken over, I should have updated the photos now because the foliage further screen the neighborhoods, but it is full, mature landscaping all around the perimeter, and none of that is to change. The only thing that will change here is the paving will change. It will remain the same area. It just bumps out by the area that we're adding on, and then we can get to the landscape plan, but essentially small perennials and shrubs that repeat what's there, just in a moved out location. So this shows the addition to the center back of the house, and the red line on the right-hand diagram shows that while the house is existing non-conforming in terms of the zoning setbacks, the addition is entirely within. You couldn't get more in and more close on this house in terms of an addition. I think importantly also, or maybe just a footnote, is that while we are over the building scale allowance by 65 square feet, we are under in terms of design allowances, so other design features, the building scale ordinance allows us to be bigger, and we are also under on the garage, which is on the front of the house, but in theory, both of those things could be bigger, and all in total, that would be a larger house than even the 65 square feet that we're asking for. This is the landscape plan that shows the addition, shows bluestone patio and a walkout from the dining room that doesn't exist now on the west side of the addition. Again, it's surrounded by low-scale perennials and low-scale shrubs, and at the entire perimeter, it is tall fencing, 7-foot tall fencing, and mature landscaping that will remain. This is our existing residence that shows the kitchen on the bottom center, and a dissolve that shows you the expansion provides for an eat-in kitchen, an island, and a great view out to the backyard, which is really one of the premier views from the house. The second floor has a walkout deck from our client's study. It will feature a railing so that the height of it is no larger than it needs to be. We are not extending the ceiling any higher than the existing house. There's no cathedrals. There's no attempt to make this any larger than it needs to be. And the roof over the little garden window, the kitchen window, will be standing seam copper. We are replacing the existing aluminum gutters and downspouts on the house, which are painted white and will soon begin to peel, or they will continue to need maintenance. So they will be replaced with copper, which will match the standing seam copper roof over the garden window. The back addition is dealt with in a sort of millwork panel detail to give it some texture and some richness and some interest. This is the east view, which shows a walkout from the kitchen and the projection of the bay and some ornamental brackets underneath the bay and a modest railing on the second on the walkout. The west is identical without the door. It's a larger view of the back. I think that about does it.
All right, thank you. Do we have a staff report?
Thank you, Chairman. I would say this is probably a typical building scale variance that the Commission sees, where there's an existing house, there's an interior remodel that the owner would like to achieve that results in a small bump out of a space to make the interior use more functional for the owner. This, as the petitioner explained, is a minimal building scale variance. It's 2% over what's permitted. And given the fact that the appearance of mass from the street does not change with this request, and the manner in which the addition is sited, with minimal views from the neighboring property, are all factors that support approval of a building scale variance. There are draft positive findings in your staff report if you so choose to grant a certificate of appropriateness for this project. We did, in advance of the hearing, receive correspondence from the neighbor to the west in support of the project, and that letter was included in your packets for the meeting. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, but we are recommending approval at this time.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions for either the staff or the petitioner? Would have been a record.
A question about the window that, I think it's called a garden window that projects out.
Yes.
And it appears it's projecting out at about the counter level where the sink is located. And I'm just curious as to whether you see that as an extension of the counter. And this doesn't affect appearance of the building, by the way. It's just a question about the internal use of the space. Do you see that as a planter area or a garden, an area where plants would be located, or extension of the kitchen counter? How do you see that being used?
Planted area. It's really a more embellished version of what's there right now. Our client loves the greenery and the freshness that the plants provide and the interest into the kitchen. We would actually step that up by 4 inches, the height of a backsplash, so that any water that would splash backwards would tend to come back into the sink rather than to flow onto there. But it's really intended to be a planting, indoor planting shelf. It's not. It's just for pots to sit on.
Just curious. Thank you.
Okay.
I just had a question on the deck upstairs. I know it's heavily wooded. Do you think there might be any kind of privacy issues with the neighbors if someone's up on that deck?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's an issue about what? What was
privacy.
The first thing? Oh, privacy?
Yeah.
Do I think there's any concerns about privacy for?
If someo's up on the deck.
Somebody's up on the
with
deck.
your neighbors,
Oh, that's
yeah.
the part
Could you
of
show
it.
us the site plan again, Bob?
Sure.
Thanks. Yeah, that's fine.
You want that one or?
Yeah, I'm just
the other
thinking
one?
the neighbor to the west.
That's the one that
West.
supported the
Yeah,
project to
they're
the
okay
west.
with that. Yeah, and there's trees there, so.
Yeah. It's a good question. I mean, if it weren't
Yeah.
for the support of that neighbor, I'd be a little more concerned.
Yeah,
about
that's
the-
true. Okay.
Any other
Okay, I guess I
questions,
answered my own
comments?
question.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, it's an opportunity for any public testimony on this agenda item, if we have any. You can see the public is
Beating down
all
the
set, so.
microphone.
Any further deliberation? I'll ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the project as submitted.
Motion's been made by, motion's been made by Commissioner, who are you? Berg, and seconded by Commissioner Preschlack. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, congratulations. That one passes unanimously, too.
Thank you.
We're rolling. Next agenda item is a request for certificate of appropriateness approving the partial demolition and non-historic addition and construction of a replacement addition at 1596 North Green Bay Road. And I'll ask if there's any ex parte conflicts on this one. Nope. I see none, so come on up and introduce the project. Sure. You mind if we take 1 minute to peruse the model? We like to do that, so give us a second. You want to pass it around? Okay, let's just pass it around. Yeah, we'll let you talk through it while we pass it.
Attached to its base.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Thanks.
I'm Paul Constant of Constant Architecture and Planning. I am the principal. Kevin Weckman from my office is the project architect on this. I was the design architect. Drew Johnson from Rocco Fiore is here if you have any questions about the landscape. And Jill and Nathan Borrega, the owners of 1596, are here as well. Borrega's bought the house at 1596, a rehabbed or renovated garage that was built in 1898 by the architect Howard Van Dorn Shaw. It was turned into a residence, I think, around 1940. There's a garage that was added to the residence when they turned the garage into a residence, and a greenhouse was removed. The garage that was added was inconsistent with the architecture, was in poor condition, and when the Borregas bought the house, they asked us to look at renovating the house, creating a new kitchen, new garage, and a master suite. We were sensitive to the architecture. We looked at a bunch of different approaches to the addition and the improvements, and we can show you the site. That's the existing facade to the east. Nothing with the garage addition is visible from Green Bay Road or the front of the house. That's the existing site plan, shows the existing garage and, in effect, the courtyard that's created. This is something we looked at as a possibility for the addition of the garage, and ruled it out because it would sacrifice 3 trees, make the courtyard a little bit deeper, and I didn't feel responded very well to the site. So our final site plan created a garage that was set at a 45-degree angle that responded to the subdivision that was created when the property was divided, and kept the courtyard character, and saved the trees by not causing the motor court to swing more to the west. Elevationally, that shows the addition of the garage from the north, that's on the right side of the screen, and from the south, the courtyard view on the bottom of our drawing. The west, the addition reflects and echoes what you see on the east exposure and carrying the roof angle and the roof down from a 2-story form to a 1-story form. We were sensitive to the material and windows. We introduced a dormer into the second floor. They're turning a porch that exists on that second floor in the southwest corner into an additional bedroom. This is an axonometric of the existing garage on top and a photograph, and then the axonometric drawing of the proposed at the bottom of the board. This shows from the northwest corner the new mudroom addition and on the proposed and the existing, and shows, you know, sort of the sensitivity to what exists, I think. This shows the existing garage and residence on the top and the proposed garage on the bottom, and it's a little difficult at that angle, but it is correct perspective. And then the dormer to the south that we're adding above the existing porch on the eastern wing of this house, and the dormer were proposed that will bring light into the master bath, and is, I think, neatly tucked away and sensitive to the architecture. Site plan of the new garage and a landscape plan by Rocco Fiore and Drew Johnson that will show the development of the gardens and the effect that it'll have on the property, the preservation of the trees, and additional screening that will be added to the south. That's the request. And
all right, thank you. Do we have a staff report?
Thank you, Chairman Pairitz. The petitioners met with staff on several occasions prior to coming before you this evening, and really explored many massing options, different detailing of the addition. And tonight the petitioner is proposing a new garage addition, demolition of the existing garage and a new garage addition that responds to a lot of unique site restraints that exist on this property. There's a 50-foot setback from all property lines, the mature trees that really characterize this lot, as well as the existing historic character of the coach house that once related or belonged to the estate home just to the west of this property. The project that's before the commission complies with the building scale ordinance as well as setback requirements. And the majority of the modifications occur on the back or side of the house that's not visible as you approach the structure from Green Bay Road. One of the big issues on this, with respect to this project, were the mature oak trees on the property. The city arborist did identify that cluster of oaks just to the west of the existing driveway as worthy of preservation. That being said, the arborist is also willing to work with the petitioner for adequate replacement plantings if the commission were to direct some footprint changes associated with this project. So I think the project that's presented this evening is a preservation project with respect to those trees. There's minimal digging proposed adjacent to those trees. There are some conditions of approval noted in the staff report to really look closely at how the driveway is removed and replaced in that area, to attempt to do everything that we can to ensure some life after construction for these trees. If the commission does choose to take action on the project as presented this evening, there are some additional conditions of approval in the staff report. One comment that is noted is with respect to the dormer adjacent to the garage addition. And maybe the model explains that area a little bit better than the drawings did in your packet with respect to providing some relief from where the angle of the garage comes off from that dormer, proposed dormer. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, but at this point we are recommending approval as proposed with those minor conditions of approval.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments for either the staff or the petitioner? I know there are some. There's guys making notes.
You know, I'll start with a
Go ahead.
question for the petitioner. And was my mic on? Yeah, okay. You know, it's helpful to have this model, thank you, because, you know, the first thing when I saw the plans, it just seems logical to me to match the one wing with the other, symmetrical. It's just almost like, it just seems natural. And when I see the angle, it just doesn't work well for me. So I know you're trying to avoid the trees, but, you know, I think we're going to lose the trees anyways. I mean, I think, you know, I don't think those oaks are, you know, when you dig around oaks, you're not going to be able to save them. I think they always die 2 years later anyways. But I'm just wondering your thought process and that angle again.
Well, if you look at the site plan, go back to the site plan, Kevin. If you look at the site plan, you see the way the property was subdivided, and you see the angle that divides the property and the main house to the southwest. And when you look at the location of that and what it does, I think, to give privacy to the courtyard or to the house to the west and that house, and open up that courtyard. I think it's a very honest reflection of what's there. I also have done a lot of houses over my 35-year career, and one of my first houses 35 years ago had large oak trees closer than that, and they are alive today. So
Really?
I don't agree with you in the premise that they would die. So
May I make a comment
Yeah,
about the oak
yeah.
trees?
Sure.
Fortunately, those oak trees, the ones that are being preserved by not putting the garage the other way and enlarging the motor court, those oak trees are already underneath the footprint of asphalt. So we're actually maintaining that same line going past those trees. So the excavation that's even questioned about, that was commented on by staff in one of the reports, saying hand excavate means when we replace the asphalt to hand excavate that area to minimize the disturbance. But that zone where those trees are, they're already protected by asphalt, and they'll be protected the entire time during construction.
good point.
Fred, oh,
Follow-up question on that. My question may have been answered and I missed the answer, but there's a significant tree in the driveway right now that's very close to the garage, and I think it's the one that's grayed in perhaps in your site plan on the screen right now, which is, I say significant, I'm talking about the diameter of the trunk. I'm not sure that it's a significant tree in terms of quality. It's very big.
Yes, that one's slated for removal, actually.
Okay, that's what I couldn't see how it could possibly remain even under the asphalt. The roots, I would think, would be attacked by the new excavation.
At some point, I'm surprised that tree's still around right now. At some point, it's not going to make it with the asphalt around it. But we've already, when we did our landscape plan, we put it together, we made sure that we covered the inches that were required for replacements. We've done it in spruce, which really kind of favor the environment. The existing residence to the west has the mature spruce trees, kind of in the flavor of what was planted there originally. Then we did just a small apple orchard, and that kind of reflects the Jensen vegetable garden that is off to the west, that was originally a vegetable and a working vegetable garden. So that's why we thought it'd be nice to kind of bring in those apple trees, kind of reflective of what that whole area was originally.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I don't have any questions, I just have
Okay,
comments.
well, why don't we get through the questions, if we have any other ones, and I'll ask if there's any public testimony on this one. And I see no public testimony, so now we can deliberate. I know there's some deliberations, you know.
Can we deliberate?
Yeah, sure, deliberate.
Well, you know, I actually went out to the site and I met the people and I welcomed them to their community. They're from Chicago, so they haven't even moved in yet. So you're not gonna move in till they're done with the dust and everything, right? Yeah, good idea. Well, welcome to the community, and you really got yourself a nice pedigree, and I'm sure you'll meet all the Preservation Foundation people, and it'll be a wonderful sort of experience for you. I actually, you know, I was looking at this plan and trying to figure out what you were thinking about, You know, I think actually when I look at that site plan, I see the way you've done the garage, and I've been in that Boardman house before, and when I was in high school, I used to clean the pool there. It was my summer job, and the original Boardman was still there, and they had peacocks in the landscaping, and they were both lovely people. I used to get all the Concord grapes I could fit in the truck from them, and an English butler was very charming, and everything. And I'm really sort of appreciative of that angle you placed there, because there's not a lot of context with the street on this project. You can't see it, of course, but from the main house, and we're hoping someday someone will buy that and fix it up as you're fixing up the coach house and so forth. But the way the garage is set now, you won't see any garage doors from the front of that house. And you may not always have that stockade fence. It'd be nice if it went away and the landscape could blend. Somehow there are successful subdivided estates do that rather than block it out. So if that ever happened, that would, I think, benefit the relationship between those buildings. And I actually thought when I was on site, Susie, that backyard's a little tight.
Yeah.
And by doing what they're doing, they're kind of opening it up and making that backyard more livable. So I kind of like that. And I might correct you're adding this little outside loggia piece here, right?
We are.
So that kind of echoes the piece here and this piece here. So you've introduced another element around it that it has already.
Which also is opening up more light to the south of the house.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
a whole,
and then you follow this
12
roof
feet of glass.
form stepping down, and you know, and this little funky thing right here, and maybe Susie's reacting to that little, but you know, I'm wondering if you maybe can plane this roof of this bay into that so you don't have that little gap. Maybe you could create more roof surface here. You could even be maybe a little smoother. It's a minor thing, but you know, didn't Lutchins do something like this on some of his houses? He'd have that kind of asymmetrical. So, gosh, I don't know. I think you've done a pretty nice job of thinking this thing through. And I think, and you make less of a turn out of the garaging, which you can kind of see it relates to the trapezoidal. So I don't know, guys. I'm liking this. The dormer window might be one of those funky things you all kind of monitor in the field. You get together with the homeowners and the carpenter and you go out to the site, because Megan's intuition's right, I believe, that you're setting it back, you're trying to do all the right thing, and then the two-dimensional drawing scares you to death, right? But it might be that it's shifted over, but I think it's a manageable thing, and I kind of like everything I see.
Thank you.
Comment?
Well, that's the first for you guys. I'm just kidding. We're giving him a hard time. It's his last official meeting.
Yeah, his last meeting.
No, it's really clever.
Any other?
I'd like
go ahead, sure.
to comment. I think it's terrific.
Thank you very much.
I was also out to look at the property, and not only removing, I would say, an objectionable feature, which is the later garage that was added, which does not relate to the house, either materials or form. But you're enhancing the form of the house, and very consistent with the character, and bringing the scale down to 1 story, from 2-story down to 1 story is very much in keeping with the other parts of the house. And the angle, I really like the way it's angled for the reasons that Commissioner Berg mentioned. It just works very nicely on the property.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Comments?
You know, I just have a
Questions?
quick question,
Sure.
too. Do you think it's going to be a problem to match the brick?
There's always difficulty matching older brick. We've got a brick that's the size. We brought it. I've worked with Nawcaw, which does brick staining. They literally have an artist who stains each brick to match, so if we get into that situation, that's what we intend to do.
Oh, okay.
All right.
All right.
I will ask for a motion.
Well, I'll make another motion here to approve the petition as submitted with perhaps the condition that's stated by staff member O'Neill regarding the dormer, perhaps to include staff in on that sort of final resolution of that. I think their input might be of some help, and I wish everybody all the luck with the new addition, and see you around town.
All right, the
Thank you.
motion's been made by Commissioner Berg. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Ransom. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, congratulations.
Thank you.
Nice house. We love these kind. Jim, you want
This
to
thing
give
here,
it
I
up
wish I
there?
had one of these things. Is this thing screened?
All right, our next agenda item is a request for certificate of appropriateness approving removal of an existing fence and installation of a new fence, gate and pillars along the front property line at 925 North Lake Road. And I'll ask if anyone has any ex parte conflicts on this one. And I see none, so come on up and tell us what you got.
Good evening. I'm Mark Holzan, homeowner, and I appreciate being able to take the moments right now just to present the proposal. But as you've seen, the intent is to build a new front gate and fence that would provide security and safety for my family in the front yard, as it does not exist currently, and also to achieve the existing columns and steel fence that are presently there are in a crumbling condition, and so they cannot be utilized. And so that was part of the request to take them down and then expand the usable front yard out to include this area between the house and the new thin fence along the proposed line. And so, again, the intent would be to provide the security for the house itself and for my family while they're playing in the yard. So,
all right.
That's simply, I'll turn it over for questions with regard to.
I'll ask if there's a staff report.
Thank you, Chairman. There are two parts to this request. The request to remove the existing pillars and fence that span between the two garage buildings in the front of the house, as well as the design of the replacement fence located closer to the front property line. This request is really before the Commission due to the change to the streetscape on Lake Road. The existing property is really characterized by those two brick garage buildings that sit in front of the main house, as well as the open lawn with mature trees that punctuate views back to the house. This is not a historic house, although it may be about 50 years old by now, so it could be considered historic from that standpoint. At this point, I think it would be appropriate for the Commission to provide comment and direction on the location of the fence. Is a 7-foot fence along the property line at this location appropriate for this area of Lake Road, for the property, for the house? Is the use of metal pillars appropriate, or should there be some modification to that to be more characteristic to the historic district, the use of brick perhaps, as well as comment on the type of fence that is proposed. The fence is a little bit different than most of the metal pickets that the Commission sees before them. It's a proposed fin that, when viewed in pure front elevation, is very thin and almost invisible, but as you move at an angle, the privacy is increased and it becomes more of a semi-solid fence. So I'll leave it at that from our staff comments, and I welcome comments and direction from the Commission at this time.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff or the petitioner? I'll ask the first one. So the staff has recommended reduction of the fence that you're requesting to 4 feet at the perimeter, and I'm curious as to your thoughts on that suggestion.
From a security point of view, the 4 feet will be unacceptable. It truly, with regard to concern for my child, a 4-foot fence would not provide the security that I require. And the 7-foot does meet the code, and again, the issue is 4 foot, somebody could reach over and entice a child to come to the fence, and it could be removed. And so that's the issue that I have with the 4-foot fence, that it does not provide the security.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for staff or the petitioner?
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just trying. Is your so the security issue is for your child to be allowed to play in the yard?
Yes.
Okay.
And just the general security of the house and my family whether they're in the house or I travel quite frequently, and knowing that the entranceway to the house is secure, and that we've had 2 separate incidents since we've lived in the house, and we've had an actual break-in.
Oh.
We bought the house last spring and spent the summer cleaning up, restoring the look of the house, the landscaping. It had not been lived in 5 years. Put a considerable amount into the security system with Keith Security, 9 cameras to be exact, infrared capable cameras. And when I brought my family back home from spending the summer in Maine, within a week, we had a break-in at 4 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday night. The individual actually gained entrance to the house by prying one of the sliders open. And obviously it was very frightening. The security system did what it was supposed to do, but nevertheless, in going to the front door and seeing the individual's car from me to you, knowing that this was real and not a false alarm, it was rather unsettling, knowing that I had a 7-month-old baby in the house with my wife. And we were fortunate that the security system was of such a quality that the police immediately identified the young man. And fortunately, it was a case where he had probably been out doing things he shouldn't have been doing the night before and thought he was coming to visit a girlfriend of his, being the former residents of the house. Now, I didn't ask to explain why he was prying a door open, but the police explained to him that it could have been very, very serious consequences if he had continued into the house. And so that was a rather startling moment for us. We also had an incident last summer, which again I reported to the police. Solicitors came to the door supposedly soliciting money for school contributions from the city of Detroit. At the same time, the individual was asking me for the contributions. The gentleman, the younger gentleman, was commenting about the quality of my suits and how many suits I owned, and the fact that I probably owned a lot of suits. Would I mind donating him my suits that I didn't use anymore? And while he was asking that, he was also staring in the front door, starting to ask questions about how long we'd lived there, et cetera, et cetera. So I immediately asked them to leave the property and called the police. And their comment was, we've already received complaints about the individuals. My comment to my wife was, we shouldn't have to deal with solicitors gaining access to our front door to begin with. And the fact that I travel quite frequently, it's unsettling again to know that this has already gone on and it can continue regardless of where we live in Lake Forest. And so that's the point of having a true gate, a true fence, one that provides security and does not allow unwanted solicitors or people that don't belong there to gain access to the house or the yard.
Well, thank you for that. I'm sorry that happened to you, but that truly explains your need for security.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, you know, as I was driving down Lake Road, I noticed some of the gates that were, fences that were closer to the road, and most of them were brick pillars and wrought iron, which is a more traditional approach to fencing, and yours is a very modern approach or contemporary. Did you consider a wrought iron fence?
That was considered, because the house is not of the historical nature in terms of some of the older architecture, and it does have cleaner lines. We thought the fin would be appropriate in that regard. With regard to the lack of brick columns, in talking about how to match the brick with the existing brick, there was a concern. We had spoken to the real estate agents, because when I bought the house a year ago, apparently from the 1950s, there have been 5 different additions and expansions to this structure, and 3 of these additions don't match anymore in terms of the brick. If you go to the side and lake side of the house, the brick doesn't match. The builders had to go and choose, to the best of their ability, the closest brick they could find from the original 1955 brick, but it doesn't match. And so the real estate agents were commenting, saying that the builders were not able to find brick through the years. So that was the issue, that we felt it was going to be difficult, and we were going to go with concrete-filled steel columns and go that route. So
Okay.
quite simply, that was the
Any
logic.
other questions for,
Yes, I have a question. I gathered from your presentation that security is your primary motivation for this. It's,
Yes, sir.
and I wanted to ask you whether you presently have or propose to have an intrusion detection system in conjunction with the fence.
I did not intend to. Again, I was going to enhance the camera system out to the area and expand the camera capabilities. Right now, the camera capabilities only exist at the outer garages and scanning the front yard. But as far as having infrared type sensors, that had not been discussed. Because of, basically because of animals or in different activity that would create false alarms.
There are systems that can distinguish between rabbits and people, and without motion detection, the cameras are not really going to be helping you.
The system I have installed is motion, infrared motion sensitive cameras. But I had not, to your point, I had not considered the again, infrared type, you know.
What I want to share with you, by the way, I have a lot of experience with perimeter security, walls, fences, and things of that type with respect to correctional facilities, keeping people in, keeping people out. And in fact, it's been an area of my research for about 35 years. And I would suggest to you that a fence without perimeter intrusion detection is not worth anything. There's no fence that's going to keep people out. And regardless of height, you bring their ladders in a pickup truck. They can bring anything in the back.
I agree. At the end of the day, if somebody wants to gain access, they will gain access.
As well as whether you're enclosing the entire property, because if you're not, they're going to come in where the fence is not there.
I agree.
So I would say that the primary motivation for spending a lot of money as well is going to be actually not serving your purpose.
Part of it is again, where we're lining the front down into the side with the fence. It does give first impression that anybody that drives up, that if they saw my child in the front yard, they would not be able to readily go and seize the child or gain access to the yard proper. But to your point, if somebody wanted to, in terms of a burglary or other intent, I'm sure, again, even with camera systems, if they have a mind to, they will get in.
The camera system with recording would tell you who had been there, perhaps, or at least that somebody had been there. That won't help you prevent the event.
Right, and so we can certainly add motion detecting, laser type, sensing.
Well, then the next thing I would add to that is, when you have that kind of system, you don't need a fence.
Yes, I do, because again, someone could drive up very quickly to the front yard with children playing in the front yard. And that is not a good feeling, knowing that someone could very readily take children from the front yard without proper security. I like your idea of enhancing the system with laser type sensing.
And just one more reaction. You mentioned the use of the front yard. It's very formal right now. The property, the existing house and the drive up the center and the symmetry is very formal. It doesn't, to me, lend itself to being a playground in the front yard. I don't get a sense that that'd be a place where a child would be playing, and certainly not without supervision.
The lake side, because the house was originally set closer to the lake, there's a very limited back lake yard for children to play in. And so this would allow a bigger space for children to be. And I in terms of enhancing the total yard, where children could run, could go and feel that they were in a protected yard. And otherwise, you have the big blacktop drive courtyard area that is just what it is, it's the driveway. Thank you.
Other questions for either the staff or the petitioner?
So Megan, I just have a real quick question for you. So the only really elevation we have of the fence is what's on top of this, just right here on top of the site plan. Is that the only thing we have really to show what the prospective fence is going to look like?
See that in the photograph.
There's also a photograph at the back of your packets of a mock-up of a
Oh, yeah, but not of, that's just of the fins, right? So it's kind of hard to really tell what the fence is going to look like, because we don't really have a sense.
Did we not have the picture
Well,
of the
we
mock-up?
have the fins, but we don't, we don't really have and we have this small thing.
I'm sorry, my name is Michael Gould, I'm an architect as well as going to be the contractor in this project. And unfortunately, it's right, you're looking at a picture of a fence, and the dimensions aren't there, which are very critical to you. The fence is only 2 inches, or the fin, I'm sorry, is only 2 inches long. And you would have to have a tremendous acre not to be able to see through the fence. In other words, it is certainly, you can see through that fence, and you would really have to be at a
Well,
really angle.
that's in contrast to, I was hoping to get through public testimony before we deliver, but I think it's a question, so I'll just go ahead and dive in on it. There's 2 things that we're really considering, and I think the questions about the use of they're informative, but they don't really help us really relate to the way it's going to look, which is what we're really concerned with. We respect that everybody's got their own opinions about whether they need a fence or not, and certainly your reasons for having a fence are valid reasons. So from my point of view, I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at the elevation of the house, and I'm trying to understand how the house will look differently, whether that's a positive thing for the house and for you, as well as the streetscape, because the streetscape is equally important to me beyond what happens at the house. So there's 2 things, 2 kind of comments that I have for you. They're, kind of questions for you to consider, I guess. Right now, one of the primary design features of the house is these 4 piers that are part of the composition of the house. Matter of fact, the house is so simple that they form quite an important part of the composition. You would see the front door, and you see these 4 pillars, and the rest of the house is kind of spread out behind it. So I'd actually encourage you to think about whether you actually want to remove those in any event, even if you remove the fence, because the fence you don't even see in the composition, kind of goes away. And when I first was looking at this, I wasn't really thinking about the fact that those were going away. I was thinking that they were just adding another fence. You might think about whether you really want those piers to go away. Maybe you want
The problem right now is they're actually crumbling and falling down.
Well, I understand
they're
that,
unsafe from that point of view,
These are
so.
quite minor constructions compared to what you're, about to build. So if it were 4 new piers that had to replace these piers, I don't see that as a big obstacle. In my mind, they should have been maintained anyway. So I'm just not trying to be contrary. I'm just telling you how I'm seeing it. I see those as an important design aspect. Could they go away and be replaced with another design aspect? Absolutely, I think that's possible. However, if you bring those all the way to the front of the property as brick piers, then I think they lose the prominence. They become a separate composition. They don't become part of the house anymore. They're a new element in front of it. So I actually like them where they are, and I don't mind a second fence that's not brick pier, actually, further in front of it. I don't know that it needs to be all the way out to the street or not. I guess I'd have to look at that, and there's plenty of other fences along Lake Road that that give us some examples to look at and to understand and to see whether they're positive or negative. However, the fins I find quite objectionable. The average picket of a fence along Lake Road of these cast iron fences is a 1/2 inch by a 1/2 inch. And so when you see those driving along in plane, they read as about 3/4 of an inch. And you see the space, which is normally about 3.5 to 4 inches apart, starts to close down, becomes 2 inches, to the eye because of the way you perceive it on the angle. This will look like a wall, particularly the closer it is to the street as you see it obliquely. So, I'm not a fan of that at all. I think that whether there's a relationship to the house or not, because the house is simple, I certainly respect that. If it's a part of the house and the composition is on top of the house and you were to push it way back at the house, then maybe perhaps that would override my concern. But on the street, I think it should have some relationship to what's there, whether it's masonry or whether it's cast iron. So I guess I didn't really pose that as a question, but that's, no, it's food for thought. And I wouldn't discourage you from pursuing some alternatives to that. But could we put that on hold for a second? Let's respect the formalities of the meeting, even though I didn't, and see if there's any public testimony first, and then we'll deliberate some more. So now is an opportunity for the public to give testimony on this if anyone has anything, and no one does, so that's great. Any other comments on what I'm talking about? Because I don't mean to be heavy-handed at all. I'm trying to, I should certainly appreciate the requirement for the fence, and these are just things that impact neighbors greatly. And this is a well-traveled street, which, with a lot of use from other residents in Lake Forest. So I'm trying to, think about it that way.
Kurt, I was, listening to you, and I was echoing they were echoing with some of my thoughts, and I was trying to also maybe not jump into that. And it was good to hear your explanation of your desires here, because I think that that needs to get factored in. I went all the way down Lake Road a couple times, and there's a datum along here of the wall that was set up going way back to when there were some pretty spectacular, in fact, your neighbor's house is pretty spectacular in regards to how to put up a beautiful wall. I mean, that's...
Yeah, the fortress wall.
Yeah, well, but it's so elegant, people stop it and go across the street and sketch it. It doesn't, even though it says stay out, it still says I love you, if you know what I mean. And that's when you, no, it's important here because we're on Lake Road and this is the Preservation Commission, and generally when we're really working at a high degree of efficiency, everybody benefits. So this is just being kind of thrown out there for your use, because if architecture is frozen music, that's what it should be saying, is that it loves you and it's also doing some spectacularly functional things. I've always really been taken with the piers and the garages here because it sets up a wonderful sort of a formality, as Kurt related to, and yet at the same time the house is not pretentious at all. It's actually got a very sort of welcoming feel to it, and obviously it's a little bit too welcoming, and people think they can approach it. So maybe the idea of imbuing it with a little bit of importance at the street level is maybe not a bad idea, And actually, when you were talking about the effect of the pillars, that sometimes when they laid out these pillars on these French chateaus, and that they would sort of put the pillars up to almost give you to frame the view of a courtyard from that street level when you might turn the carriage in and approach. And I actually am pretty taken with your piers, and those rusticated proportions are repeated on the garages as well, and that's kind of a really neat thing that happens here on this simple building. And I'm just wondering if you guys are a little bit interested in maybe solving your security problems, and maybe also adding to kind of the elegance of the street. It'll certainly help your property values, and maybe before trying to just go with the solid steel piers of there's some substance, a 20-inch pier. I'm trying to remember the last time I saw one, and from 3/4 they'll look pretty big when you start to look at them 3/4 of an angle. If you were to say bring some of these piers out to your street line and stagger them and fill in with some wrought iron of a height you're comfortable with, I'm wondering if that might be worth taking a look at. I'm not sure that what we're seeing right now is going in the right direction from the streetscape standpoint.
What about anybody else have thoughts on this?
Well, I agree. I mean, I think that the whole charm of that front courtyard there really is the piers. I mean, it's almost part of the house and part of the presentation, so I think those are important to keep.
What I think might be very helpful actually is just for you to hear the comments that we've made and maybe revisit this and look at the streetscape and frankly, feel free to challenge the conclusion. They're not even conclusions; they're just kind of observations. I think at this point, I'd feel a lot more comfortable about tabling this for a month and seeing some alternatives and some real, dimension drawings of what the fence would look like from the street. And I also would challenge you to think about at least pushing that fence back to the line of the fence that's adjacent to it, because I certainly wouldn't want to see it closer. I think it's closer to the street right now than the one adjacent to it, but I might be wrong.
I can't.
No,
I think it's aligned with it,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's in line with the neighbor's big wall.
To the north.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Is
it
this I see the survey here, so let me just look at it real quick. Is this I'm thinking that this wall goes across and then is this?
Well, we're 7'6" from the property line, and we're beyond the property line. We set it back just for that reason, aesthetically.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to your commentary here, and I think it's very important to realize that 2-inch projection, a 2-inch fin is really, you'd really have to look at it a couple times in any kind of angle to see any difference from what you have right now.
So it's a 2-inch
Store's
fin
gate.
spaced how close together?
Pardon?
The spacing was
3 inches.
3 inches.
And 3-inch spacing, and it's only a 2-inch.
I think that would look like a wall from a car. I would think that would, have you ever driven down the expressway and in a construction zone, they put these fins up on the top of the concrete barrier, and they're spaced almost 4 feet apart, I believe. They're about 5 inches wide and they're on an angle. And when you're driving, you cannot see the headlights from another car. They appear as a wall, but when you look out your side window, you can see great gaps. So that's the effect that I don't want to see along Lake Road. I don't want to read this as a solid fence because the fins are 2 inches wide. I don't think there's any architectural relationship to this building. If anything, this building is more classical than modern because of the Palladian kind of form that it has. So, I mean, I'm not a fan myself of that approach, particularly so close to the street.
It's more corporate than it even is modern.
This building, the fence.
The fence is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if this was a Miesian kind of house or something, I might understand it more, something that's, mid-century or something. This just doesn't really seem like it's, complementing anything, the streetscape or the house. And yeah, but that's like kind of an aside. The bigger concern is that, when you're driving down the road, I don't want it to appear heavy as a. Anyway, go ahead.
I just want to add to that, you're talking about a 2-inch, 3-inch spacing with 2-inch fins. I can tell you that 3/4-inch bars at 5 inches spacing will have the same visual effect at an angle. It's like Venetian blinds, even with, and you need, if you're trying to keep people out through the fence and not climbing it, but directly going through, you need 5 inches as a maximum dimension, and that will still give you the visual barrier.
So I think the big thing here is the staff has said, let's try to make this a more modest proposal, 4 feet, we feel more comfortable with, and I understand where they're coming from, but I think that given the security concerns and frankly, given the precedent for other taller fences, I don't really have a problem with a 7-foot fence if it's done correctly, if it's done nicely. I'd like to see you be able to accommodate your security need and frankly, preserve the forms and the architecture of the building. I encourage you to look at some alternative solutions is all. And, guys sketching alternatives, we won't let you see his drawing because I don't like it. But, unless there's any other deliberations, I would look for a motion to table this one myself.
I move we continue the petition to allow them to take their comments and work with staff to come up with some solutions.
Could I ask for one opinion, because you have such good background, regarding 1-inch diameter rods or 1-inch diameter rectangular or square type, as in the case next door, the big house next door has 1-inch square.
Well, I think it's perfectly legitimate for you to give us to explore the other solutions that are done along Lake Road and say, look, this is what works over here quite well. We think that this is a great solution. We'd like to, do something similar. And that gives us great comfort because we can go out there and we can actually see it. You know, here we are, we're looking at a proposal that's black and white. It's not a model, it's not three-dimensional drawings. And we, you know, don't always get it right because, you know, we're trying to conceptualize this in our mind too. So if we have the actual product and we can see it, that helps us. And so in a further petition that said, here's the product, here's where it's located, this is the kind of fence we'd like to use, we'd love to see that because that really helps us see it. Here, I think that, you know, the three takeaways that I have are, let's not rob the character of the existing building if we can afford not to, or if we can complement it differently, if we can take the piers and we can change and put them in a different spot. All those things I think are worth examining, but I think we like the piers the way they are today because they add something to the composition of the home, something positive, some beautiful home. And we'd hate to see that, you know, a distraction from that. The location of the fence, whether it's all the way out or partially out, I think depends a lot upon the solution that you propose for the fences. If you do this, if you remove brick piers at the driveway and you choose to use brick piers for the fence with a fencing material that's complementary to whatever else is going on with the house, I might be inclined to push that closer to the house than all the way out to the street because I think that those piers are kind of important to the composition of the house. But that doesn't mean that you have to have brick piers. I just think those are things you should consider and think about it as holistically. And man, this is an expensive fence. Do some drawings. You know, let's see what it looks like so that we can, you know, understand it a little bit better. So now, if you'd like to make that motion.
I did.
All right, the motion's been made by Commissioner
continue,
Athenson.
yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Moyer. All in favor of continuing the petition, say aye.
Aye.
All right, and that's passes. No opposed, I think. Thank you. I'm
Thank
sorry
you.
not to be able to just rubber stamp that, but I think we're hoping to make that as good a solution as we can for you, so.
Thank you for your time.
All right, our next agenda item is a request for a certificate of appropriateness approving an addition with a building scale variance and a landscape plan at 1296 North Green Bay Road. And I'll ask if there's any ex parte conflicts on this one. And I see none, so carry on when you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Austin Dupre, and I'm the architect representing Katie and Jess Belcher this evening. Craig Bergman is going to join me as well. He's the landscape architect for this project. So many of you are probably familiar with this house along Green Bay Road. It's a Howard Van Doren Shaw house, built in 1898. Beautiful eclectic style house, kind of English country Tudor style house. With a variety of additions and modifications since it was built. And I want to start by noting that Katie and Jess, Katie's from the community, she grew up here. Katie and Jess, their first house that they bought was an old David Adler house in Lake Bluff, coach house that they lovingly restored. And they've really been working for the last 12 months while they've owned this house to restore it. So what you see here on this slide is really a result of over a year of scraping the entire house down to raw wood and repainting it, repainting all the windows on the house, creating, taking off all the aluminum screens and storms on the house, and building authentic wood storm and screens for the house. So they've really put a lot of effort into this house so far, and I think what they're proposing tonight is a further enhancement of what they've already been working on. So let's see. The house is located several hundred yards back from Green Bay Road. It was a subdivision of a larger estate. Originally, the house was built on the Swenson farm. There were 3 buildings that were originally on this farm. This house, the house immediately adjacent, which is, the address is 1298 Green Bay, which was built as a theater house adjacent to this one. And then there was a barn on the property that was subsequently torn down. This is a photograph of the original house when it was built in 1898. Some of the notable features here are the double gable that you can see here on the east facade, and some of the elements that you'll see still recognize in its current form. The second floor, double hung windows. You'll notice there's a covered structure, a porch in essence, that was removed at one time, a covered loggia area along the back facade, and if you zoom into some of the details here, you can see these typical Shaw columns with the chamfered corners and the scallop tops that were later incorporated into a screen porch that was built at an unknown time. Again, going back to the house in its current form, the 2-car garage was a later addition. This is the rear facade in its current form. A shed dormer was added to the rear of the house, along with this 1-story screen porch at the east facade of the house, and then a small glass conservatory was added at the south facade. And then a view to the west, again a 1-story deck with a metal railing at that west facade. And Craig will be showing you later that we're proposing to take out this pool that was a later addition, and you'll see later in the presentation that the landscape doesn't seem very sympathetic to the house right now. Just a little more context. This is 1298 Green Bay Road, also designed by Shaw. Some of the notable features here, second-story screen and porch that was later converted to a bedroom, but very similar kind of arts and crafts style, but also very eclectic, which I think Shaw was known for in this period. And then the house immediately to the south of the subject property. This is the house fairly obscured directly to the north. So going to the site plan, I think one important thing we need to address this evening is as configured and in its current form, it really conforms to absolutely no zoning current zoning laws that are in place. The setbacks are 50 feet from all property lines and 50 foot from the edge of the easement, which actually encroaches throughout this property. So given that 50-foot setback and the 50-foot setback here, there's actually no building lot available. And in terms of the building scale, it's currently over bulk right now. Part of the reasons it's so far over bulk is because the easements aren't counted towards allowable FAR. And then obviously this house was on a much larger piece of land originally, and it's been squeezed in by these artificial property lines that were added later. And just some comments on proposed changes for this evening. Craig's going to be talking about the landscape changes, but what I wanted to note was in the site plan, the existing configuration of the house is this L shape here. There's a 1-story porch here, and we're proposing to place another 1-story porch off at this west end of the house in an effort to really accentuate the axial nature of the front door here to this back glass conservatory, and then feeding out to the rear landscape. Another house that Shaw did after this was the House of the Four Winds, that really accentuates this axial connection between the front door and the rear landscape. And I think that's one thing that we're trying to promote with this renovation, is symmetry at the rear facade based around this glass conservatory, and then through Craig's development of the landscape, really enhancing that symmetry in the land. If you go to the second floor, the roof plan, we're also proposing to add a covering over the existing second-story porch, creating, in essence, a sleeping porch, which is a very popular element in Shaw's homes of this period. Just looking at this immediate neighborhood, there are about 9 other houses that have similar second-story sleeping porches. Some of them, obviously Ragdale is one down the street, 1110 North Sheridan Road, 1075 East Ringwood, 500 North Sheridan, 980 North Green Bay, 90 Awani Road, and then 81 West Laurel, which is the House of the Four Winds. Just getting into the proposed plan of this one-story porch. It feeds off of the kitchen family room, and I know that Katie grew up in a house where the porch was kind of the main family gathering spot, and I think she envisions being out there and enjoying the landscape with her family. And I think that's really the way that Shaw designed his houses, especially at the turn of the century, before air conditioning, when the country house was kind of a new idea. His houses were all about being in the outdoors and being in these screened-in porches and enjoying the landscape. Going to the facades, again, houses of this period for Shaw, I think, were very eclectic. The basis was kind of this Tudor English country style house, but what we're trying to do today is propose a porch addition that is relevant to what exists on the house now. I mean, obviously, if we wanted to look at some of other Shaw's examples of pergolas and porches and kind of rusticated arts and crafts style porches, we could do that. But what we're trying to do is respond to some of the architectural features that exist today that I think were an evolution of what was there originally. So looking at the existing one-story porch, still carried over those original fluting details of the timber structure, which we are going to play off of here in the new porch and accentuate to some degree because of the scale difference. At the second floor porch, we're also going to carry over some of the details found at the eave of the second floor of the house, continuing the rafter tails out, and again trying to make this blend and become part of the family of this house in terms of the language of details and materials. A side elevation showing again first floor porch and proposed second floor porch. And again, the front elevation, which really isn't affected at all by this addition. And then the rear elevation, or the side elevation here with the existing porch. And this is just a quick visual tool to help everyone see the existing porch and house and how we're trying to create some balance and symmetry around this existing conservatory on the back. So I think with that, I will pass it over to Craig and let him take it
Terrific.
through
I wonder if we could have our staff report, and then I promised to ask a long question about the landscaping and give Craig an opportunity to...
Can I
Sure.
add one more
Yeah.
thing to my presentation? I
Yeah.
also want to let you know that Katie and Jess have consulted with all their neighbors. There have been no objections to the plan, so we certainly understand that this is a a very intimate community back here, and trying to work with the neighbors.
Appreciate that. Thanks for accommodating my request. Let's go ahead and have our staff report on this.
Thank you, Chairman
Because I think
Pairitz.
the landscaping is quite important, and we want to not short shrift that with a brief presentation, so we're going to give you a little time, but I'd like to get through the staff report today.
Sure, and I'll be brief. This petition, given the extent of the building scale variance proposed, the significant changes to the landscaping, is before the Commission for preliminary input and direction at this point. There are 4 major aspects of this project. There are the addition, the 2 screen porch addition, the 1-story addition, as well as the 2nd-story addition. There is significant tree removal and a replanting plan. The demolition of the existing pool and patio area, and construction of a new pool and patio area. And finally, the relocation of the existing drive entrance from the front of the house to the side of the house. And then the last aspect of the project is really not part of the Historic Preservation Commission's purview, but this project does require review and approval by the Zoning Board of Appeals for a zoning variance. Both of the additions encroach in full in the setback area, and this is before the Commission for preliminary input and direction to not only give you an introduction to the project before taking final action, but also help staff understand where the Commission stands with respect to the additions as it moves forward through the process. There are a couple items at the end of the staff report just asking for additional information as this moves forward to help us understand what the easements documents say on the plat to verify and confirm that anything proposed is consistent with those documents. But I welcome your comments on the size, location, detailing of the additions, comments on the landscape plan and replanting plan, as well as the driveway relocation. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Megan. So I just wanted to make sure that I was clear that we were looking for kind of a preliminary, here's the recommendation, preliminary comments this evening. And then one of the, so is the intention of the petitioner to proceed with the zoning variance based on kind of the comments he hears tonight? Or
Given the way the meetings fall, your commission will actually meet in advance of the zoning board hearing. So ideally, you could provide some input, direction to the commission or to the petitioner, and they could bring back a project next month that could be before you for approval.
Okay, and the zoning variance is for the screen porch to the left, if you will, the front of the, or well, it's not the back, but the larger one, not the sleeping porch. The sleeping porch.
Both of them encroach into the setback.
They both. Okay. Thank you. Okay. I wasn't sure if building on top of the footprint of the existing first floor required a second variance.
It does.
Okay, thanks.
And I would also just add, to help clarify, this petition, we need some verification on the actual numbers for the building scale variance.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why it's before you for preliminary input, while the petitioner works to get us final numbers on the extent of the building scale variance. We were able to talk briefly before the meeting, and the numbers outlined in the staff report should be similar to what the actual numbers will be.
Okay, thank you. All right, if the petitioner would like to give us some information on the landscaping, we'd love to hear about that.
Well, a different representative for the petitioner. I'm Craig Bergman. He'll actually be hearing from me number 7 tonight, too. One of the things that I feel real strongly about this existing landscape is the previous owners had raped the property. If one would just kind of anticipate what the historic view out the back of this house once was, it encompassed all the way out to where our audience is sitting tonight. There's a remnant wall which we're keeping, which is asymmetrically placed to the back end of the house right here, which is an old reminiscent to a Jensen-laid weather edge flagstone wall. And I think that intentionally what had happened was originally with the open porch before the house was enclosed in this area, this was a viewing platform that probably held quite a significant garden within a view of the country beyond, and countryside beyond. And obviously it's shared, if you know, were all of you folks, did you drive by this house? Mm-hmm. Because it's a very unique situation. One of the things that the insensitive subdivision of the property did was it literally had the driveway, which is a shared driveway for 3 different houses. It truly does make it very difficult to make any kind of landscape sense with the remaining property that we have. There are 2 issues that I'd like to speak of tonight, which are variations that I know are important to the HPC. One is changing the drive entry aspect to the motor court entry to the house. Right now, one comes down from Green Bay Road, bends around the property, comes in, and then skirts into this corner. And the first thing you see is not the Tudor gable, but you see the double garage door. Incredibly ugly. The thing that I was most kind of incensed about when I first met the property was that here's a historic house that's been given the plaque. Everybody loves it. Its name is Broadley. And the first thing you see is the garage. It just seems really, really unfortunate. So we had an idea between mature oak trees, and I know that we're all sensitive to mature trees. There are no major trees coming down. We can actually slip a quick turn into the drive from right here, where there are presently Serbian and Norway spruce that the previous owner had planted for privacy, which range anywhere from 10 to 14 feet tall. And so there's a big colony of Norway spruce right here. All of these trees that you see here and here are those trees that we're actually transplanting and putting into the woods. Boston had showed a more contemporary house set into the woods back here. When one looks out the living room windows and out the front door, the first thing you see in the wintertime is their garage door and their tan-colored siding, very different than what the woods view is out this way. So by making this quick turn, all of a sudden the first thing one sees is a loggia-covered wall to the garage that exists right now. One sees the front entry, and you see the beautiful timber work of the front of the house. Then, once you park here, you back out. If you want to see the garage doors like we do right now, one has to really traverse all the way through this court and then enter into the garage. Another safety issue that's come to play since the Belchers have lived here is there's an intersection of 3 driveways at about a 50 by 50 foot area right here where you never really know who's coming and going. There's a lot of maintenance vehicles that come through here along with UPS and the residents, and this is really the only safe place for the kids to play on their bikes is on their driveway. So the aspect of getting rid of that kind of danger zone right here and keeping the plantings low so the Belchers and the neighbors can see who's coming and going through their new drive access, it really does allow for a friendlier aesthetic approach to the house. And I think it actually reduces the safety issue that's down here for these 3 shared properties. Another one of those kind of bad decisions from a previous owner, and obviously I'm strongly opinionated about all this stuff. There's a butt ugly pool set right in this, right in this turf panel that's totally disproportionate. It's modern materials. It has a automatic cover above ground in a giant box, and they use the wrong stone to relate to the house. It's monolithic, smooth cut limestone. The whole thing is bad. The screen porch functions to a small terrace here with 2 garden beds that flank the garden room, but it literally doesn't provide any outdoor entertainment space. The Belchers live at the pool to see how it would be to live with it. They've always thought it was ugly. Austin and I helped them realize how ugly it was. So what we're proposing to do is, with this complex of the framing of the porches, we create a nice terrace level, recycle that big beautiful boxwood hedge that we had shown you in the previous picture, put an on-access bluestone step down with a landstone retaining wall, actually, sorry, a brick retaining wall to match the brick foundations of the house. And then a low bluestone landing, a glorified landing at the base of the big stairway. And then this, Megan had mentioned that we were putting a new pool in. It really is almost like a reflecting pool. It's just meant to be 24 inches deep. I think it's 8 foot by 16 foot. It's just it's a plane of water more than a swimming pool. There's no current. It's just meant for kids to, you know, stick their feet in, but most importantly have a pretty element. And then as part of the existing landscape, there's a mature established grove of Norway spruce here. The Belchers have a stand that was planted probably 10 years ago, which are now about 20 feet tall here. There are kind of bean poles of blue spruce that someone put in on 6-foot center, so there's absolutely no bottom branching, just tops. And then there's an old mature grove of Norway spruce right here. So the development of the porch, the patio, the new stairway, all of this, there's existing screening, very mature screening here that would therefore allow not being able to see much, if any, year-round of the porch view from the neighbor's view or the Belcher's view as they come down from Green Bay Road. All of these green circles that you see here are new evergreen plant materials that are more like evergreen shrubs, things that will keep their branches to the ground. Western arborvitae, dark green arborvitae, Canadian hemlock, yew. So the whole thing is to intentionally be just more enclosed with less large, tall plant material to disproportion the landscape. Here's this view as you see the driveway right now. Here's the front facade as one sees it today. This is looking out from the garage doors. This is looking in to the driveway and the neighbors to the west. This is where we're proposing to break through these spruce trees that we're transplanting through to get, this is looking from the driveway to the trees. This is looking from the shared road to the trees from the east side. You can just see that coming through this way would be a much nicer approach to the house than it would be from the garage doors. This is a sketch that we did just showing, Austin had shown the superimposition of the new porch here on the existing landscape. This is the new landscape. So the terrace is raised. There's a rail that picks up the detailing on this porch that creates the rail for the terrace, comes down the stairs. The face of the brick wall is all planted with summer flowering shrubs, shrub roses, hydrangeas, and the like. So when you're down on this landing with your feet in the pool, you look back and you see more of a central court to the house, and the main entertainment area is on the upper level where the bluestone terrace is. It's hard to see this landscape plan. It's so pale. I brought a couple of copies of plans if people want to see them, if you want them, if they weren't in your packet. But here's cutting through to the motor court here. These are the transplant spruce, some of which are on the Belcher side of the shared road. Others we put on the other side of the road, which is still the Belcher property. And just a very simple planting palette, but most importantly, we're developing a pretty little parterre or courtyard garden that allows one to experience something other than, you know, a parking pad for cars before you get to this beautiful old house and the front door. In the backyard, this is just a technical plan of what we spoke of, and this is that old historic wall which we're keeping. So the plantings are at the lower level. That's why they need to be 12 to 15 feet tall, because we lose 18 inches because of the upper level. Megan had mentioned there's a tree removal, extensive tree removal. What's happened is over the years, people just kept throwing plants in and not tending the border. So, one can call every tree important, but I think that if the previous people who had planted these spruce had wanted them to do well, they wouldn't have planted them 3 to 5 feet apart. What's happened is there's a few have been lost. There's bad air circulation in that area when trees are congested. Therefore, they've had aphids over time. So they've outlived their usefulness or their beautification. So the red is removal of the old spruce, Norway maples, or a couple of old rangy lilacs, which are now growing in shade. And there's two bony white pines at either end here that have no bottom branches. And we thought it would help to get more light along the side of the house, because as you know, this is the first facade one sees as approaching from the Green Bay Road access. All of the green that you see in here are all trees that we're planning on transplanting as in here. So we're taking all viable goods and recycling them. So, does anybody have any questions?
All right, thank you, Craig. Questions for any of the presentations or staff?
Yeah, I have a question. Austin, can you pull up the first photo that you showed of the original structure, and you had mentioned a porch that was part of it. I'm just wondering how that fits in the context of the proposed site plan, where it was. You know, it was in the front of the house, on the east side.
It was at that rear elevation. So.
Yes, yeah, so we're.
Right here. So this was lost at some point. The porch that was added on at a later point is right here. And this first floor covered porch with inbuilt brick base. So the brick that exists here basically wraps around that first floor. This was removed at a certain point, and then, like I said, you can see these wood columns, very reminiscent of a lot of Sean's arts and crafts.
So can you pull up the site plan and just show us where that is in relation to the proposed porch?
Austin, can you please use the microphone?
Yeah. Thanks, Meg.
All right. That porch was located approximately right here.
So it's a little bit larger than the porch that is being proposed now, and because of the new kind of bump out at the entry, or it's not really an entry, is it? Is that
no, I'd call it a conservatory.
Yeah. That old porch probably was right around where the corner line is.
I'd say it was kind of just about right here, a little off center of that facade, but probably the full depth of this terrace here.
And when was the porch added that's just to the east of that?
I believe staff looked through the records, and there's really been no records of dates.
But they were never there at the same time?
All we have is that historic photograph, and then once the Belchers bought it, we've been documenting things. But, it seems to me that there's a lot of sensitivity that went into this porch right here. Yeah. So I would think it was built, pre-war during a time when craftsmanship was still really appreciated.
And is the intent on the new porch can you tell us just about the congruency between the two porches and how you thought of material and?
Sure. Well, I'd say the detailing in the columns is probably the most direct transfer over to the new porch. So the wood materials, the interior of this porch would all be wood. The interior of the proposed second floor porch, again, would all be wood. We would express the rafter tails in the same fashion at that second story porch as has been done and exists at the existing eave of the main house. We're looking at roof pitches, really keeping them similar. Going to the shed roof here, we're trying to make this second story addition be as discreet as possible without conflicting with some of the existing proportions of the house. But we're really looking at some of the existing shed structures and trying to blend scale, details, materials, roof pitches, everything we can so there's more cohesion than I think there is now. If you go to some of the, I think actually Craig's rendering, I love. It's a great character sketch of the rear facade of the home. But I think this really captures the essence of what we're trying to achieve, because we really see this as a marriage of the landscape with the home. And we're, again, trying to take some of the elements that have been added at a later point and just celebrate them. And like you had mentioned before, Susan, I think the symmetry on this rear facade was one of the driving forces of placing that new porch where we have it.
Is it something that you'd be comfortable actually building out a model to bring to life, or what are your thoughts on?
Well, I mean, I think at this point, we're trying to be extremely modest with costs until we got a read on how everyone felt here. But you know, we're hoping that the time and money they've spent on hiring the two of us and doing these landscape sketches and three-dimensional diagrams is enough to show you the intent here. So hoping not to build a model, because obviously
So the
it's
sleeping
expensive.
porch would be, could you just highlight where so that's added up there, okay?
Right.
I see.
Well, right, and there is, and we've talked about this, there is an existing second-story porch, and the roof that you see here is an existing roof. All this is a low-slope shed roof
I see.
above this porch.
Thanks.
You know, I'll follow up with a question on that now that you have that elevation up there, because to me, when I look at that rear, I mean, first of all, it's such a shame the house, really, the original structure, has gotten lost over the years with all these additions, and it's such a nice, simple form. And I keep wanting to just look at that simple form. And it seems like now that, excuse me, now that I'm looking at this sketch with that porch, the dominant feature really to me becomes the porch. And I'm wondering if you're trying to balance the other screen porch, why did you make this new screen porch so large? Why wouldn't you want to make it about the same size to balance that?
Well, you know, this house is really a game of balance rather than exact pure symmetry. And I think to kind of take this porch and rubber stamp it over on the left side of the house would almost start to become kind of mimicry. It just, I feel like, you know, again, this rear facade, there really never was any symmetry to it. I think the most beautiful, prominent facade in the house is the front, and I think that's been preserved to a high degree. This is really what we've been given. So I agree it would be great to see it back to its original state just as an artifact, but we're really trying to work with what we're given, and I feel like the size doesn't necessarily compete with the rest of the elements that are in the house.
What's the porch on the right that was added before? What's that use now? I'm not sure I have is that just another screen porch, or is that?
Yeah, it's just another screen porch off a living room. I mean, it's pretty small in scale. It's I'd say it's 13, 14 feet wide. The one we're proposing is about 18 feet wide, so it's about 4 feet wider. But we're trying to align some things. This corner of the existing house defines the edge of this porch here. So again, you know, Shaw's houses, especially this rear facade, there's really nothing that's purely symmetrical, but I think it's more about balance, and it is kind of this flowing country house. So I think as long as we can be consistent with the details and be respectful of the overall composition, I don't see this as kind of dominating the
Any other questions for?
You know, Megan, can I just review the bulk ordinances just
Sure.
for everyone's benefit? So an open-air porch does not count towards bulk, correct?
The building scale ordinance provides an allowance for what are considered design elements. Those elements include open porches, screen porches, bay windows, dormers, elements that add interest to a facade but are not massive or heavy, contributing to the appearance of bulk. I believe in this case, in Austin, you can help out. That allowance is maxed out for this project, so any addition would require a building scale variance.
So just so I understand, so you're saying that the screened porch is not increasing the bulk? It's
No, it's treated as if it weren't a screen porch because they've already maxed out that bonus.
Okay, so
Right. There's a 10% allowance for design elements, and that includes loggias,
Bay
screen
windows,
porches. So basically, anything we would add to this house would increase the bulk. And the numbers that you're presented with tonight are accurate. We were trading voicemail since Monday and finally got a chance.
So, Austin, you mentioned something about the easements not counting towards the bulk in the current ordinance, and of course, there's a significant easement through this property because of the access. Can you comment as to how the numbers would be different if that wasn't an easement, if that was part of the property? Because
right. Currently, if you just calculate allowable bulk and don't take into account any of the easements, we're proposing about a 32% overage in bulk. If you took the easements as part of the property, we'd be at about 20%. So it does affect it pretty dramatically.
You know, we're still asking questions, I guess, so I'll ask if there's any more questions.
Okay, what is the size of the house right now, square footage? Did someone say what it was?
It's approximately 5,000 square feet.
Yeah, it's right here. It's
yeah.
I'm sorry, it's easement.
What does it say, 5,000?
Very good. It's got to be in here somewhere.
I think the allowable bulk on the property is close to 4,000 square feet, and what we're proposing would be at about close to 5,500, about 5,429. So what we're proposing here would be 1,429 square feet over bulk. Obviously, part of the bulk calculation is that attic calculation line.
Yeah.
And because of the height of the roof and the steep pitch of the roof, that adds about 900 square feet to the calculations. So we're being penalized, I think, one, by the historic nature of the roof line that goes up into that attic calculation line, and then two, like Craig had mentioned, and this is kind of an unfortunate subdivision for this particular house because not only does it have a driveway, a shared driveway running right through it, but the property lines were drawn very close to the existing structure. And like I mentioned before, there is absolutely no allowable building footprint on the site. So anything you do anywhere on the site is going to require a setback variance.
Any other questions?
And so you're adding just floor area of the first floor screen porch. What are you adding, about 400 square feet?
Right, about 400 for the first floor and 150 for the second floor.
Because of the roof on the second floor?
Right, because of the enclosure of that existing second floor deck.
So you're adding about 8% of the house?
Yeah, approximately.
And then Craig, you're talking about thinning out those evergreen trees that block that M-shaped gable that you see when you've just approached the house, so that you'll actually see a little bit more of that facade. Then will it be the happy effect of that?
You would see the roof, which I don't think you would see the first floor.
Craig, please use the microphone.
You would see the dormer in the roof, and
Yeah.
you would probably see you would see the second story windows.
Yes.
But in time, the future plants will cover that up as well.
But it'd be kind of nice to see some of that house. It's kind of irritating not to be able to get a good look at it right now. There's, when you come onto the side, and in the way it looks in the aerial photograph, the original vista through the house must have been pretty spectacular out over the farm field, because you can see that new building they built in the Shaw Prairie for the students to study. So are you going to be restoring any view out over that, or is that part of your intent to thin that
that
out?
is the intention.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, that's
we're trying to expand the feel of the property however we can, because it was so unfortunately scrunched.
Yes. Okay. All right, those are my questions.
I guess I have one other question for you. If you want to go back to Craig's nice little rendering, that would be terrific. Austin, the finishes on these two screen porches, right now, I think it's just, is it white aluminum siding or white painted on this one that's to the right?
Yeah, it's all painted. It's painted white, and it was scraped down and painted recently along with the rest of the house. So if we go back to I mean, this clearly shows you maybe a more accurate way of the coloration and scale of these pieces.
Okay.
And you know, looking back at it further, I think this scale is much more accurate. I think when Craig was drawing that sketch, we hadn't done any of this modeling yet. So
Yeah.
when you look at the actual scale, it's a little bit closer and maybe provides a little bit more visual transparency as well.
All right, any other questions?
Well, just one quick one. Now,
Sure.
Shaw designed this, then was Shaw the one that did the treatment to it, that tutorized it a little bit? Did he do that, or is that somebody else?
Yeah, no, the timbers at the front facade are definitely
By Shaw?
original
Uh-huh.
Shaw, right.
I'm looking at the historic photo from the southeast where it shows the original porch, and one of the things that it might just be a product of a bad copy, but the porch is darker in color, if you will. And almost like your little sun gallery there. I can't remember what you were calling it, but it just strikes me that that is a device that you might. Unfortunately, they just painted it. But you know, as far as devices go, to reduce bulk, a darker color might make these sun porches kind of be a little more less intrusive. Frankly, I'm not sure that it makes much difference. You know, I think the general concept of the bulk ordinance was probably not aimed at this kind of a site. And so, you know, we're looking at this inside the boundaries of what was, you know, kind of a uniform ordinance that was designed to protect neighbors against imposing houses on their, you know, towards their properties. And I think you've done a good job in terms of where you've added, you know, bulk to this house in terms of kind of negating that effect. You know, it doesn't really seem to me like it's burdensome, and because of the scale of the home and the scale of the homes around it and all that, it doesn't really, I'm not offended by the bulk of this house. But still, you might look at that color. Any other questions for folks? I'll ask if there's public
testimony.
testimony.
One more, just a curious question. You know, you've spent so much time restoring this. Is there anything else that you would like to restore? Like, you know, the brick was added later, right? This used to be like a shingle
some of
style?
the brick at the front facade looks original. And it looks like
really?
old clinker brick. So,
interesting.
I think the brick that was added at the rear facade feels aged. It may not be an exact match of the front, but it's pretty close.
So is there anything else that you would look at restoring to
I
take
think
it back
this is
to
it
the...
after this project, but.
I'm not trying to add money to the project. I'm just thinking, just curious.
It seems ambitious enough in this day and age.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But you should see the interiors. I mean, it's pretty striking, and
Well, we're available for that.
And, you know, just curious, with that original back open porch, and it was bricked in, did they remove the exterior wall and just move it out?
yeah,
And that became
all
living
those bearing
space?
walls were removed.
And so it became living space, is that what it is now?
Right. But the entry foyer, a lot of the doors, the hardware, there are a lot of original elements, and the windows are original. And those,
Really?
you know, instead of asking to replace them, they restored them, which is
That's
obviously
awesome.
much more expensive and not as practical. But
Flushed out where it was
Wow.
cut back.
Yeah.
This is flush.
Right, that's right. That's right.
But that's what you have to do when you love these old houses.
Yeah.
But I respect it.
Theirs is over to the
That's
side.
right, smaller too. All right, I'll ask if there's any public comments or testimony at this time, and I see none, so we can move on to deliberations. We like to jump the gun on that. I like to jump the gun on that, so so I already did.
Maybe I'll start. You know, I'm sympathetic to it. I think I like the landscape plan quite a bit, and I like the driveway. I've been in the driveway on numerous times, and I think it's kind of an elegant and interesting solution to seeing the house as you drive in, and So I'm supportive of that aspect of the project. And the bulk issue, I don't know, I think it was a pretty strategic way to add some really interesting living space to the house in a sensitive way. And I liked your comment on the color, but I think Austin mentioned earlier that they had talked to all the neighbors, and it seems like they would be receptive to feedback around that if the new porch would feel imposing. So
it's a really important aspect of
Yeah.
the petition because, the bulk ordinance is in fact designed to protect those neighbors.
Yeah.
And so, not just our reaction to whether or not it imposes hardship on a neighbor because the neighbors can always change, but also, in fact, the actual neighbors. It's nice to know that they're supportive, and so.
Yeah,
I think,
so, I mean, if it's 400 plus 100 square feet, I forget the exact numbers that he mentioned on the floor space, I think if that issue was addressed sensitively with color and/or with a fairly active dialogue with the neighbor, and that would be the only point of discussion, I think, that I would want to see us deliberate on. Just interesting and creative ways to address that and tackle it, but.
Kind of the reality is that the view that we see in the sketch is available really pretty much only to the homeowner. So, I mean, we're looking at their view of their house, not the neighbor's view of their house, not the street's view of their house. And so I look at it, my kind of knee-jerk reaction to it on the color, well, gee, if you darken those up, it might be kind of an interesting way to, soften the impact of that, what's making the mass of the house look even more spread out. But at the same time, I don't find it offensive to, if someone were to say, well, we really like that, we'd like to keep that. It doesn't really, I don't find it particularly offensive myself. I'd probably like it better if it was darker, but.
And the lot is very quirky. I mean, I don't know if you felt like that when you're walking
along. And the houses too.
Well, yeah, and so I think there's a quirkiness to the porch ad, and there's some symmetry on the design and the detail with the other.
Yeah. I really, at the end of the day, the house has got a bunch of different things going on, and it's really kind of an interesting kind of study in composition, and I think that's more important than, a device to make this look smaller or bigger. It's really, finding ways to relate these appendages to the original structure in ways that make it feel less like they're additions and more like they might have been there all along. And those are really hard for this group to, put their finger on in this kind of a forum. So, Austin, you'll find those opportunities as you develop the drawings, I'm sure. But, that's how you make these things, feel like they're right. I think in terms of the character of the house, we're not going to restore this to the original Van Doren Shaw simplistic kind of form. It's a very elegant, very nice house. It's just, it's on this side of the house, it's kind of a departure from that. So
yeah, I think it, for me, to get kind of a comfort level with what's going on here, it's very useful to look at that aerial photograph. Can you put that up? We have it in our packet. Do you have that?
I mean, this, with the other
The satellite,
homes and
the satellite
contacts.
picture.
Sure.
I think that part of the danger of looking at plat plans and property line plans, I mean, they give us this funky shaped lot, and we have setbacks in our minds and things like that, which are important and certainly in tighter communities, but that's actually not as good as the one that we have in our staff packet, so maybe the people up here can open theirs up. But the way this works is that both this house and the theater house that was owned by it, that were built, they all have vistas from inside that really address the distant landscape. You don't look at the neighbors, say, if we were along Washington Road in town, it's very important not to put an obtrusive addition on the back because someone might be looking right at it. But here, and I think, Pauline, you remember, I think it was 2 years ago, we had that lovely afternoon in the theater house, and in that great space, you look away from this house. You don't really see it because the corners kind of address each other because they're both rotated. And really, when you look at this aerial picture, you don't see any property lines. You see the area where he's putting the screen porch is really going to be kind of invisible from that house because it's in a blind corner. There's a great two-story space. It's spectacular in that house. next door, and you look to the distant field in one respect, and I think there's even a fireplace of some size in there, so you really wouldn't be looking at this house particularly. And with the idea of what this historic building was originally, with those cut-ins, which Shaw was known for doing, creating outside spaces by cutting into the building, and he would add a porch. There were quite a few on this house, and they've been built over. But with Craig's idea of opening up the vistas to the distant landscape, I think that's kind of a key to the big idea of what this house was. And the screen porch is outside space, and so maybe that's kind of a historic strain, an intellectual kind of a narrative. It sort of brings this house back to maybe what it might have enjoyed before. I mean, it's a pretty big house if it's 5,000 square feet, but I don't know how that all ends up in bulk. It doesn't look like a big house when I visited. But so I guess I'm speaking in generalities because I'm not going to get another shot at this thing. And I feel comfortable with what I'm seeing, and I like the idea. And as you know, we always have strived on the commission, is that particularly dealing with these historic homes, this being one of Shaw's early home. Here you can see the cut-in. There's a lot of outside space in that thing, you know, a duality of outside space, a covered porch and a loggia. But with these historic homes, it's a little bit different approach. It's not so cookie cutter. If people are going to improve these properties and upgrade them and spend money on them, they're going to be ensuring that these homes go through this century and they're going to resell for a greater value, be more likely to be taken care of. So in sort of the private sector approach to historic preservation, you know, these houses aren't government projects where we can throw money into them. I think we have to think about helping out the homeowner a little bit here, and I like everything that I've seen. And I really like the idea of seeing the side of the house and opening the vista up, because for me, those are spiritually uplifting things that one will experience in those homes.
Anyone else?
Well, add some comments. I'm very much in support of this petition exactly as it has been presented. The one area I had a little concern, I was pondering for quite some time, was the width of the stairway at the back, the actual new stair, on the basis that it's a grand, and the question being whether it leads to a grand enough space to be that grand. I think opening up the vistas as you've done it, it is leading to a great space visually. So it's not a criticism at this point. And also the sketch was leading me somewhat in that direction, and as it was pointed out, the photograph of the rears modeling that went with it is giving a little different picture, which I'm very comfortable with.
Architecturally, that glass greenhouse extension, the width of the inner facet is the width of the stairway.
Okay.
So
right.
That's where the precedent came from.
Right. And also regarding the color, I'll issue a minority report to the chair. Mine being that I like it the way it's presented. I like the light color. I think it relates to the upper level of the house and extends the composition horizontally and makes it look as if it could have been there always. And I think a dark color would not do that. And I think it's elegant. I think it gives a lightness to the new porch that has a very light, delicate feel to it, which I think is very, very pleasing.
You know, I forgot to weigh in on that new cut-in for the driveway. It makes all kinds of sense in case that comes up at zoning or with the arborist. I can't imagine if you had it now and you came in to petition to put it where it is, we would tell you were nuts, right? So, I mean, I think it's a good move.
Yeah.
Right. If that helps you as you go through more reviews.
No, I think originally the 32% over bulk sounded really scary. You know, like, oh my gosh, we can't, you know, we just can't go there. But I think given the constraints on this property, the weird kind of subdivision, I mean, and the depth of which you've really investigated solutions to problems that actually enhance the landscaping and the historic nature of the home, I just think you've really thought it out well and have come up with some answers that really, you know, 32%, it makes sense now, you know.
Mm-hmm. And they're really adding 400 new buildable square feet, which sounds different than the 30%.
Right, right. So taking in context of the weird.
You said 8%, you know, that was the
I mean, my sense is it's not a question of percentages or square footage. It's a question of can the solution be accommodated on the lot, and it feels like it's not an imposition to me. So I mean, that's where I come out on it. So more of a gut reaction to it than a mathematical.
And one that's of a diaphanous nature too, because of the screen, which is much better than say solid brick and, you know, a kind of a brutal look.
Yeah.
So,
And very show-like, too.
this is all ammunition for your forays too.
We're also reducing impermeable surface too, where there's less driveway, and we're getting rid of the pool.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Is a pool impervious? I guess it is.
Yes, it is.
They're gonna need all
Gravel paths are considered impervious.
Yeah.
Really?
Any other comments, words of wisdom, intuition? All right, I think we're good. We're not going to act on this tonight, so I hope we've helped you and given you something to think about, and good luck with it. It's certainly a great house. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. So, all right, well, I guess I don't need a motion to close that item because it's not officially going to be closed. We'll come back at some point.
Good luck at zoning.
You could make a motion to continue.
All right, we'll make a motion to continue. Does someone want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion that we look forward to seeing this project again.
All right, the motion's been made by Commissioner Berg and seconded by
I'll second it.
Commissioner Athenson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We will continue that. Thank you. All right, we have one more agenda item, and that is a request for a certificate of appropriateness approving modifications to the existing driveway and landscape, including the addition of a low garden wall over the front property line at 1320 North Elm Tree Road. And I believe we have Mr. Bergman going to present this for us.
Thank you, Austin.
And I'll just make sure no one has any ex parte conflicts. I see none, so thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Craig Bergman. I'm representing Bill and Molly McKenna, who are not here tonight. They have lived in this house a long time, and they finally embraced improvement. And one of the things that we're doing here is embracing a wonderful New England-style house, architecture by Sarfarth. The views of the property, you know, from the east side of Elm Tree. Here's the front facade. Very, very long, kind of unusual number of windows. It's just a charming house. And basically, they have a big pea gravel circle drive, elegant, very, very characteristic Seyfarth, beautiful wood coined entry. I love the single lantern, the scroll work over the door. They're actually, this is just a little aside, they love this house so much that they're actually taking the old lantern and having it reproduced exactly and putting back up. Not two, but one. The existing stoop remains. The existing inset garage doors, the back porch, everything. We actually are working with Austin on some things. I'm sure you've seen this project before, but this entire elevation does not change, nor does this elevation from the street. So we were told to just tell you what new materials we're proposing. The bluestone landing, which exists, we're actually expanding it to more of a pedestrian court off the driveway. We're expanding it with New York bluestone. The pea gravel driveway actually just changes a little bit in shape because we're actually pulling the drive away from the facade of the house to help give a little bit more softening. If you see the driveway today, the driveway comes within 6 feet, some places 4 feet from the facade of the house. What we're proposing to do, as I showed on the sketch, would be to put a low 24-inch tall mortared New York fieldstone wall. These are examples of a freestanding low stone wall. This is one that's actually creating a terrace level. It gives you a little bit better texture, but contextually you can see how sympathetic bluestone and New York fieldstone is to work together. It's actually just a different mineral in the rock. It's actually the same components of the minerals, just in a different organization. That's why it's a different color. The existing driveway edge is right here, as you can see. The same curb cuts here and here. Good night, everybody. what we're proposing to do is, here's the existing stoop. We're literally just expanding a bluestone landing here. There will be 4 matching orangerie boxes with plantings, an attractive bench, and a espalier plant on their chimney. And then we're really the only true change that we're bringing to you, because we're in East Lake Forest and in the historic district, is the introduction of this new wall, which is well below the height of what it could be by the fence ordinance. And then there is a bluestone walk that connects you from the curb up across the pea gravel drive to the bluestone landing, which then allows you to enter into the house. All of the plant materials that are at the house right now, these are overgrown yews. You cannot see the windowsill or the bottom half of the last pane in the windows. The evergreens have allowed to, in essence, bury the house in planting. So we're historically using the same type of evergreen being used, but we're using a modern hybrid called an Everlow yew, which, if you never prune them, only get 30 inches tall, so it'll always reveal the windowsill. And the reason they're used and not something more stylish like boxwood or whatever is because snow falls off of roofs, and yews are stronger to snow than boxwood are. Here's the street view of how the low stone wall would look. You can see it presents itself quite handsomely to the house. And I think most importantly, the historic driveway was in essence the front walk and the driveway. And what we're doing with the wall and bringing the bluestone path down to the curb is we're actually welcoming the pedestrian as much as we are the automobile. And I like that change. So, but you can see this is a 6-foot person, so it's very much a low statured situation. In relation to the plant materials, there are no large plant materials providing any kind of diffusion of the architecture from the street. There's the village forester, or the city forester we met with, asked that we take down one of the parkway trees over here because it's a liability. We're putting in a large replacement tree on the parkway, putting in a large 6.5-inch ginkgo tree here. There's a big red oak down on the driveway down here and the like. So the plantings you'll see from the street are actually boxwoods framing the walkway, and climbing hydrangea clambering on the wall to help soften the edge. There's no intention for lanterns on the wall or anything like that. It's just meant to be like a New England stone wall in front of a charming house. This gives you a sense of kind of a very understated, low-slung court that welcomes a visitor, whether you're coming from the street where you're parked or whether you're coming up to the driveway. And then we're maintaining the loop connection between the garage drive and the front drive. So it's a quite minimal change, but I think a nice facelift to a landscape that needs some TLC. Thank you.
All right, do we have a staff report for this one?
Thank you, Chairman. This is a pretty straightforward request. Again, it's before the commission due to the changes to the streetscape and the addition of a low garden wall at the streetscape. In this case, the wall is incorporated well into the landscape, the proposed landscaping. There are some modification to the driveway as it exists, but in general, the character of the driveway will remain. As Mr. Bergman mentioned, there is a parkway tree that will be removed, and the petitioner has worked closely with the city arborist and the forestry department throughout the process to work through the proper replacement and removal of that tree as part of this project. The project does comply fully with zoning requirements in terms of driveway location and the wall height, and staff is recommending approval of the project as submitted.
All right, thank you. All right, terrific stuff. This is an opportunity for questions from commissioners for either the staff or petitioner. Do I understand the gravel is changing for the driveway, or it's the same?
No, it's the same exact material.
That's what I thought. All right, I don't have any questions.
I just have one thing, a point of business I just want to ask you about here. I'm looking again at the aerial photographs. It seems like I get fixated with that. I think they're valuable tools, and actually as we sort of review it here from the air, your proposed stone wall is somewhat close to the front edges of the house immediately to the south, it looks like to me. I don't know, you don't have that in the site plan, but, and then these are staff images too. Craig, you don't have this in your.
Right, no, in my handheld I don't.
Yeah, see that information.
It doesn't show up, but
yeah.
Just so you know, this Washington Hawthorne right here.
Yeah.
Just off the edge of the drawing, we're adding an additional one, and our about edge here. The stockade fence that exists stops here, and the corner of the garage is right where my red dot is. So it's not directly, the front of their garage cannot be on the edge of the park.
Yeah. You're slightly. You're slightly forward of the neighboring home, but nevertheless, that other home is significantly closer to the street than this design.
Yeah, this is the garage on both sides of the townhouse.
Yeah. So, but I mean, as far as a datum goes, if someone were coming along that road, they'd pick up your wall and the neighbor's house, and that edge would have somewhat of a consistency to it.
If you're coming from
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
No, but what I'm saying is that I think.
Seems like kind of a stretch, because this has got so much landscaping in front of this, you don't really read the house, you read the landscape.
No, but what I'm doing is I'm saying that I kind of like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that for putting something out in the yard, I mean, I think that it actually kind of addresses, certainly you'll see it when you're coming along.
Oh,
here.
sure.
It's sort of has a nice kind of a dual function. Okay.
Any other questions? Opportunity for the public, and I see no comments from the public. Deliberations.
I think it's fabulous.
There's one fabulous. Super. Yeah, I think it's great.
It's quite an improvement.
It's a really nice house. I
thanks.
walked by this, I live rather close to this house. I walk by this house all the time, and actually was in this house once upon a time. I can't remember when, but it's got 2 stairways, one on either end of a long, really neat house. And it in need of this attention, and I think it's going to be really a nice addition to it. So I don't have any other comments. I'll ask for a motion.
I move we approve the petition as presented.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Athenson. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Moyer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? And so that passes. Congratulations. Good luck with that. Thanks. All right. Opportunities for the public to address the Historic Preservation Commission. Any non-agenda items, if there is any? Oh, is there?
Craig Bergman, 900 North Waukegan Road.
He's back.
I just wanted to say that I will very much miss Guy Berg on the commission. He's been a kindred spirit, and he's very talented, and to have an architect on the commission is a big deal.
It is a big
And
deal.
I think the position to be filled, it's a big hole to be filled, and it's a challenge. But City of Lake Forest, I'm sure, has really appreciated it. So, as a resident, thank you.
Thanks for that, Craig. I'm sure that Guy appreciates that very much, and I appreciate you reminding us all that we do have the benefit of one more meeting with Guy collectively, because we have a meeting next week that he must attend. But we won't have him next month, so we'll save our tears for next week. Any other additional staff items?
You stole my comment. There is a joint meeting next Thursday at Gorton Center. It's scheduled for 6:30, and that will be Guy's final meeting.
Where in Gorton Center, Megan?
Probably the big community.
Yeah?
The community room.
Okay.
Is that
Kidding, it's gonna probably be mine.
Megan, is that televised?
All right, so just the follow-up comment on that is that is next 6:30, May 3rd at Gorton Center. So, anything else, Kathy?
Actually, I believe if Commissioner Berg is willing that there will not be a new appointment until beginning with the June meeting. So if you're willing, you can actually stay for a couple more meetings.
Well, I'll stay as long as the city needs me. How's that sound?
Thank you.
Wow, what good luck for us. That's good.
I want to be good and
Can we just continue them in 1 month at a time? All right, well, that's nice to hear. All right, I'll look for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Commissioner Berg has made the motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner, you can't second your own motion. Commissioner Ransom, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, good evening. Thanks, everyone.